One of the most profound, if incredibly stupid thoughts I've had this year is that, I don't know, sometimes I think to myself that I shouldn't do any of this, that there's no point in doing anything at all. And then I have a secondary thought, which only has come in as of late, and it's a consequence of this more profound thought, that the point of living, in some ways, is to be in touch with other people. It's totally banal, it's totally stupid, it's totally dumb. Like, oh, the point is to love each other. It's like, yeah, Jesus said that 2,000 years ago. It's nothing new. Then again, nothing is new under the sun, as they say. And so, again, it's totally stupid because it's not a discovery, it's not novel, it's not anything nobody's heard before. But what is so, for me personally, profound about thinking about it is that when I do, I attain in me an inner calm, security, and serenity that reminds me that I don't care if I sound stupid. In some ways, of course I do. It buzzes over me like a bee, and I hear it as ringing in my ear that there is such an immense stupidity, and as I had said in a previous video, myopia to this thing that we call recording and posting. And in some ways, perhaps dwelling on it is poor, of poor taste, of poor form, of poor mind. There's no reason to keep thinking about it and stewing upon it so much. But I do, and I continue to do so, because it is the baseline set of assumptions that you have to have if you're going to do this. And it's, I think, one of the reasons so many people don't do it. Andy Warhol said in the 1950s that in the future everybody would have 15 seconds of fame. And he was half right. Everybody, and this is where he was wrong, who wants to would have it. And it turns out a lot of people don't want to. I think a lot of people do. And the limelight is, in some ways, a much coveted commodity. The universal dream, as Rush says. But it's like, if everybody did it, you would see in the related videos to this a bunch of no-names who you've never heard of, all trying to speak their minds. And of course a lot of people are. Well, I think more aren't. And there is something quite conspicuous about this. Conspicuous about the absence of the types of people that you find online. And I've seen this in left-wing circles, discussed as the constant, you might say, oversaturation of white people online. And when I do this, I think, well, am I a participant in that? Maybe. I don't know. That's neither here nor there for the moment. What's conspicuous is not only the racial aspect of things, but that there are more people whose minds ought to be expressed online who don't get to do so for lack of access to the amount of money that they need, for lack of resources to know exactly how to say what they need to say, for lack of time to strategize and associate with the right kinds of people to get what ought to be said in the right, you might say, social milieus online. Because like most things that involve speech, it is about who you know and not what you know. Of course, what you know plays a role, and this also plays a role in the time it takes to actually deliver it. But all of this is to say that most people really don't want to do this. It's really a quite stressful thing because of this precarity of it, this who you know, this time involved, this, we might say, constant, purely human subjectivity that is involved in it. I heard a professor of mine, when I was at her house, meeting with her with a bunch of my classmates, and this was about a year ago. She was discussing with her husband, who was another professor of mine, whether or not she should start a blog. And he was the one who was suggesting it to her. And she said, no, why would I want to do that? To speak to a bunch of people I don't know about topics I'm barely familiar with. This was her immediate response, as all of us were in the room. And so because she had it so ready to the forefront of her mind, it's obvious to think that this is something she dwelt upon before. And I think it's fair to say, similarly, that this view, why would I do this to hundreds of thousands of people that I don't know about things that I'm barely certain of? It's so common sense, it's so obvious. And in this way, there's something almost, I hesitate to use the technical term logocentric about it, because it is technical, but I'll say it. It comes from the philosopher Jacques Derrida, and he claims that in the Western philosophical tradition, that is in metaphysics, the logos, or the said, the speech, the account, has a certain center position about which everything hangs as periphery. And the center-periphery relation hanging about the logos means that silence and what is absent, what is not accounted for, is not only secondary, but is something like a phantom, haunting the logos. But this means that anybody who speaks is always haunted by this idea of these conspicuous absences. And anybody who is absent is haunted by those who speak. And all of this is to say that the speech has something very, really weird about it, in that when you assume that somebody has the right to speak, you assume something extraordinarily profound. Again, it's nothing new. Jesus said in the gospel, you'll know them by their fruits. You'll know them, people, his followers, by the actions they take. And he opposed this to the hypocrites, the Sadducees and the Pharisees, who just said things. Talk is cheap, you might say. It's all obvious, but it's the certain combinations with which it's said that give it a certain kind of meaning beyond what is obvious. Of course, the profound thought is that none of this really matters. None of it really matters. It's good to think about. It's fun to think about, I think, because it gives everything a certain richness and depth, a certain color, a certain tincture, which makes it all the more interesting, because you can see the many shades of gray that are highlighted by it. I don't know. And of course, the profundity is that anybody can do this. Anybody should. A lot of people should, I think. But people won't, because of these hauntings that go about. I don't know. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found it interesting. Have a good day.